Hi, this is Amy, and welcome to my channel, Amy's Hidden Ledger. Today I would like to talk about the hidden economic spillovers of the Iran war. Trump threatened escalation, then he agreed to a 2-week ceasefire. Oil right sucks John. And the market did what markets love to do. It decided the scary part might already be over. That is the trap. Because the market is very good at pricing relief headlines, it is much less good at instantly repairing pipelines, reopening shipping lanes, replacing lost fuel, or reversing all the knock-on damage that already moved through the system. So the real myth I want to challenge today is not this is just about oil. It is this. Oil fell, therefore the danger passed. That sounds sensible. It is also exactly how people get caught watching the wrong signal, because in shocks like this, oil is not the whole story. Sometimes it is not even the most important story. The real damage can keep spreading long after the first chart starts looking better. And that is what I want to break down today. What got hit, how long recovery usually takes, why the second wave can matter more than the first, and what ordinary households should actually watch before they assume this is over. The first mistake people make in a war story is counting explosions. The better question is what kind of assets were hit, because not all targets matter equally. If you hit a headline, you get fear. If you hit a bottleneck, you get economics. And that is exactly why this story matters. Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline was hit just hours after the ceasefire was agreed. That matters because Reuters said it had been diverting around 7 million barrels a day to the Red Sea after Hormuz was effectively shut. Reuters also reported attacks around Jubail, including the Sadara petrochemical complex. Iran's own refining company confirmed an attack on the Lavan refinery. Shell said its Pearl gas plant in Qatar may take a year to repair, and even where facilities were not directly destroyed, the straight disruption trapped product in the wrong place. Kuwait's giant Al Zour refinery could still make fuel, but Reuters reported it could not ship it. This is the part that gets lost when people reduce the story to one oil price chart. You are not looking at a single market. You are looking at a web of pipelines, refineries, ports, shipping lanes, petrochemical plants, gas facilities, and insurance decisions. And once enough of those are disturbed at the same time, the question stops being, did one facility survive? The real question becomes, how much friction did the system just absorb? Because that friction is what households eventually pay for. The market trades the speech. The economy lives the repair schedule. That is why you can get a huge relief rally and still not have real relief. Reuters reported that airline executives were already warning jet fuel supplies could stay tight and expensive for months, even if Hormuz reopens. Hapag-Lloyd said normal traffic across its network would still take 6 to 8 weeks. And around 1,000 ships were still stuck in the region. So yes, traders can look at a ceasefire and think, great, worst case avoided. But a tanker does not reopen because the S&P had a nice morning. A refinery does not repair itself because traders decided Trump tacoed again. And a jet fuel shortage does not disappear just because crude stopped going vertical for one day. This is why I think the smartest framing is not war versus peace. It is paper market versus physical system. The paper market can reverse fast. The physical system usually cannot. And if you remember that one distinction, the rest of the spillover story starts to make much more sense. Now let's talk about the most important word in this entire topic, normal. Because normal, after a shock, can mean very different things. In some cases, repair is surprisingly fast. After the 2019 attacks on Saudi Arabia's Uqaiq and Kurais facilities, Reuters reported output could be fully restored in 2 to 3 weeks, or by the end of that month. In other cases, normal takes years. The EIA says that after the 1991 Gulf War, Kuwait's oil production exceeded pre-disruption levels in less than 4 years. That is a massive range. Weeks on one side, years on the other. So where does the current shock sit? Probably much closer to the messy middle than people want to admit. Reuters cited the IEA saying Gulf producers had cut at least 10 million barrels a day because of the conflict, and that shut-in production would take weeks and in some cases months to return depending on field complexity. The EIA's current outlook is also not exactly screaming back to normal next Tuesday. Even under its optimistic assumption that the conflict does not persist past April, it only expects production to return close to pre-conflict levels in late 2026. That is the opening myth in one sentence. The ceasefire can be quick. Normalization usually is not. Now we get to the part most people feel but do not immediately connect: the hidden tax. Because once the first oil shock passes through the market, it starts charging households in less obvious places. Flights are an easy example. Airlines do not just watch crude, they care about jet fuel, route disruption, refueling stops, and whether key hubs stay operational. Reuters reported carriers were hiking fares, cutting flights, and changing operations during the Hormuz disruption. Shipping is another hidden tax. Hapag-Lloyd said the crisis was costing it $50 million to $60 million a week, and some of that would be passed on to customers. Then there is fertilizer. Reuters reported that the Gulf is a major fertilizer producer and transport channel, that Hormuz carries around 30% of globally traded fertilizers, and that some fertilizer prices were already up 30% to 40% during the conflict. That matters because once fertilizer gets squeezed, the second wave is food. Not instantly, but with a lag. That is why these stories feel so deceptive. The energy part hits first. Then, after the public thinks the main event is fading, the food portion starts coming through. In other words, the first wave is the oil chart. The second wave is the bill you did not think was related. And the second wave is often the one that feels more personal. Russia-Ukraine is the best modern example of why a war shock does not stay inside oil. Inflation was already high before the invasion. What the war did was pour more pressure into a system that was already hot. In the United States, consumer prices rose 6.5% in 2022, with food up 10.4%, food at home up 11.8%, utility gas service up 19.3%, electricity up 14.3%, and airline fares up 28.5%. Those numbers do not mean the war caused all of that by itself, but broader studies suggest the invasion materially worsened inflation rather than merely nudging oil for a few weeks. The Federal Reserve estimated the war raised global inflation by about 1.3 percentage points in 2022, and the OECD estimated the shock could add at least 2.5 percentage points to global inflation if the commodity moves were sustained. For food, the IMF estimated that higher international food prices added about 6 percentage points to consumer food inflation in 2022, with a lag of 6 to 12 months. So the real lesson from Russia-Ukraine is not that every war creates inflation from scratch. It is that once energy, fertilizer, and trade routes are hit together, inflation spreads far beyond the first oil chart. So what is the lever for ordinary people? Not prediction, not panic, not pretending you have a better geopolitical model than the Pentagon and the oil market combined. The lever is exposure. If you think the shock may still be moving through the system, ask a more useful question. Where am I exposed to the second wave? Fuel is obvious. Flights matter more than people think. Groceries matter with a lag, and large transport-heavy discretionary spending can get more annoying than expected, even after the main headlines calm down. So the practical move is not to become dramatic. It is to become harder to surprise. Keep a bit more flexibility. Be more careful with optional travel if fares are already adjusting. Watch category inflation, not just the headline CPI, and if you are trying to read the story in real time, stop asking only what oil is doing. Ask what shipping is doing, ask what jet fuel is doing, ask what fertilizer is doing, ask whether the system is actually normalizing or whether the chart just calmed down first. Because the bigger paradigm shift here is this: most people watch wars like spectators. The smarter move is to watch them like household risk managers. And for the next video, I have two options. Option A, what a real household inflation defense plan looks like when fuel, food, and travel costs start rising. Option B, why shipping choke points quietly control far more of the global economy than most people realize.